Welcome back to Bazaar. I'm Inko, and the Bazaar is officially going into open beta. I'm pretty hyped about it. There's some bad news though. The Bazaar might officially be free to play, but it's also officially pay to win. Which sort of sucks. I really hope they change this monetization scheme. I'm going to give the broad overview of the changes before I get into the specifics, and we're going to be starting with the pay to win issue. And also, please excuse the weird viewport you're in where it's like kind of cramped. There's this little bar up here. The reason for that is because we're actually watching the patch announcement video. The official patch notes are not live. This went live well before them. So I'll be using this to do my patch review. Now, if you've seen a battle pass system before, you've seen something very similar to this prize pass. And if you've played Marvel Snap, you've seen something alarmingly familiar to this. You earn XP towards levels on the prize pass via challenges and play in both normal and ranked. Ranked tickets are available on all free levels, and there are new card packs, Mysteries of the Deep for Vanessa and Frozen Assets for Pygmalien, available in the prize pass. Unearned expansions become available for gems after the current season. Now, the way this is written is really ambiguous, and I would actually argue maybe even intentionally deceptive. Because down here there is subscriptions, and it's not even really clear about what subscriptions are. There's like so few words here, like they're ashamed to talk about it. Bonus XP towards the prize pass, bonus chests, monthly exclusive cosmetics. And that all sounds fine. Why would I be upset about any of that? Because frankly, the way this is written, it talks about free levels, then talks about the cards being in the prize pass. It doesn't say if they're on the free or the paid track. It's doom and gloom to assume they're down here, right? They should be down here if they're down here. However, in the announcement video, you can see a video demo of what this looks like, and you can see the free pass up here and the premium pass down here, and the Pygmalion card pack clearly being part of the premium pass. This is unambiguous. The cards are actually only available if you pay money. Yes, you can pay gems in a month to use them. However, that doesn't matter. That means for the first month when people are playing with these cards, if these cards are strong, you have an advantage. And just speaking from game design in general, one, new cards are generally stronger. It's how you encourage people to play them. It's how you make things worth engaging with. If the new cards are bad, then people will just turn off the system and not use these cards at all. I'll get into that more in a second. But two, new cards are inherently less balanced cards. They haven't been tested as much. Usually when stuff gets nerfed, it's new stuff. So if something's going to be imbalanced as hell and overpowered and only available to people who pay money, and then in a month after the balance patch, the free players get it, well, Marvel Snap players know exactly what I'm getting at because apparently that was a consistent problem in their game. This is inherently, inarguably, pay to win. You are giving a mechanical in-game resource to people who spend money that cannot be achieved through any means as a free-to-play player. The fact that in the future you can buy them, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't matter. It's pay to win right now, and a month from now when you can buy this set after the balance patch has made it more okay, a new set of cards will come out that you can't get. It is a treadmill that doesn't solve the problem. This is pay to win. Plainly speaking, inarguably pay to win. I'm hoping that they immediately dial back on this. They immediately realize this is a bad system, because personally, I'm still going to play the game. I'm still going to buy the pass. I don't really mind spending $10 for a game. I have spent more than that on World of Warcraft subscriptions for a game that I enjoyed a lot less than this. So yeah, sure, not a problem for me. But for a lot of people, this is a huge problem. And even for me, if I win with the new cards and my opponents weren't using them, it's going to inherently feel less rewarding, like I didn't earn my victory because I had an unfair advantage. This is bad for the long-term health of the game. The cynic in me, which is also the optimist right now, says that this is an attempt to really effectively monetize the launch of open beta and then generate some community goodwill by walking it back for the next season. I am very worried that this won't be changed. This is a bad, inarguably pay-to-win system. And it fucking sucks. I'd be so hyped for this patch if it weren't for this. Anyways, I don't want to dwell on it much longer, so let's move on. There were dev clarifications offered. The paid track of the prize pass is cash only. This is actually fine. The problem is what's on the paid track, not that you have to spend cash for it. The paid track is going to generate extra chests, the immaterial chests you've been seeing when you win games. That's from the subscription. It would make no sense to let you spend gems to get more gems. It should be cash only. The issue is with what's on that paid track. You can turn off the expansions after earning them. That's neither here nor there for me. That's a decision that might be necessary one way or the other, and I don't know which is better. But I don't really have an opinion on that. A lot of people probably do. And they clarify that seasons are meant to be 1 month long, but honestly, I'm not convinced that'll really happen during the first, maybe even couple of seasons, because we're still developing the game. If it does work out that next month we get a new season, I'll be very happy, but I'm frankly not really expecting that to happen. Anyway, let's move on from the pay-to-win doom and gloom and let's start talking about the actual updates. There's some really meaningful changes happening to the game as a whole, both in terms of massive overhauls to the starting kits and in terms of a massive game warping change that affects nearly every item in the game. Kits are being revamped. There are now just 3 static kits that have some degree of randomization in them. First of all, Vanessa and Pyg are getting 8 gold and 5 income base, whereas Dooley's still picking from 2 cores with 4 gold and 5 income base. So Dooley gets a core at the cost of 4 gold, which is the cost of a medium bronze item, and that does make sense, at least mechanically. I don't know how it'll play out. I still don't like the 2 core choice, but it does make sense mechanically. The new starting kits, there will always be 3, and there are randomization within the kits. The first one is just 12 gold, 3 income, and I look at those numbers, and I very genuinely see that, and I think, weren't the best kits in the old one like the silver loot kits where I just got a bunch of gold to spend on day 1 anyway? And I think that those numbers might be a bit too high. I look at that and I think, oh no, what if the best thing to do is always just not have a starting kit and take 12 gold, 3 income? However, the other things are pretty appealing. Choice of 3 gold tier skills to me seems like the weakest option here because this is so much power in the early days. If you miss on your choice of gold tier skills, it's going to be crippling, but if you hit, it's going to be incredible, at least for the first couple of days. If you hit huge on like augmented weaponry, you just win the run, so like maybe this is worth doing on not Pyg. But on Pyg, I don't think you ever take this. I think on Pyg, it's like you go hard into property Pyg every time. But what's really hype is choice of 3 enchanted small bronze tier items and plus 4 gold to help you fill that board. This is really cool. I don't know that optimization speaking, it's going to be better than the top option, and it's going to be hero dependent, obviously. But I do think it is incredibly cool and very fun. It is the kind of gambling in this game that I can endorse. And there is another massive universal change. As Reynad said, it's just 1 bullet point, but most items had their cooldowns increased by 1 second. We don't know the exact details on what most items mean, other than specifically the nerfed Dooley items from last patch. All the Dooley items that just had their cooldowns increased got omitted. There might be other items that got omitted. For instance, it would make perfect sense if Katana got omitted. We don't know specifically which ones got hit or not, but the vast majority of items in the game have had their cooldowns increased by 1 second, and that's probably for the best. The game was universally too fast in pretty much every meta of the game so far. This is going to be a nerf to wide weapon Vanessas that just blow you up instantly by massively decreasing their startup time, decreasing the amount they get from stuff like Alacrity and Flurry of Blows. It's going to be a nerf to pretty much everything, but in particular to, to builds like Matchbox Pyg or Infinite Loops that are really reliant on spamming things very, very quickly and feedback looping in on itself. And I think those builds are probably too powerful in general and do need to be toned down for like a better, more sane flow of the game. Personally, I like this change. I think it's to make the game better in the long run, but it's going to probably take a couple balance passes before the game really starts to line up properly again. This is a huge change and has a lot of direct consequences in terms of balance and imbalance. As an example, faster weapons like the double barrel are proportionally way more nerfed than slower weapons like the double whammy that hardly gives a shit about this. So just inherently, the longer your cooldown was, the less this affected you. Then stuff like haste, slow, and freeze are all proportionally less impactful. And stuff like getting full haste up time with a Shadowed Cloak, like Shadowed Cloak is very directly nerfed by this. So this will have a lot of far-reaching balance effects. Next up, Shipwreck is back to gold tier and it's not alone. The robotics facility is also back to gold tier. It's the exact same text as this where it starts with +1 multicast, and now at gold it has 10% crit chance, diamond 20% crit chance, and they're not alone, there's a new item like them. Or rather, an old item that's never been good. The bunker now starts at gold tier, it does 10-20% less damage as opposed to crit chance, and your shield items have +1 multicast, which honestly sounds very strong. I'm interested in seeing the new bunker. It's also probably just safer for these items to exist at all in an omni-bonk world where everything is slower. Giving all your shit multicast is a little bit less dangerous, but I expect all of these items to be very, very powerful, and in particular, I expect reducing Shipwreck down to gold to give Poison Vanessa a much easier time closing out her games. But honestly, all of these items look to be powerhouses, and I'm really looking forward to seeing if they're just good, or if they're overpowered, or if I'm overhyping them. These 3 items will be a big shakeup to the meta, and I'm really interested in seeing how it plays out. In a little bit, I'll go through and talk about every specific change that did happen in the patch, but to quickly cover how I think this is going to affect the meta, as I mentioned, I think Poison Vanessa is going to do a lot better in the late game. I think Aggro Vanessa across the board falls off a lot because increasing the cooldown of their items means your opponent has more time to scale. Something I didn't mention with Omnibonk that's very important is damage over time in general to me seems more valuable. There's just more time for it to tick. This won't really apply to like early game burn when you might be failing to stack burn in the first place, but even though you apply your poison slower, I think it will be a net gain in effectiveness for damage over time builds anyway. The Omnibonk's also a direct nerf to healing. Anyone who's ever had like a high healing scaling build has been in the situation where you died between procs of your healing items, and as you increase the window of how long that's going to be, you increase the chance that stuff just kills you between your heals. I think Property Pig in particular, like the late game scaling pig stuff, all just feels genuinely incredibly strong. I think maybe Fixer Upper is a little bit weaker. It's effectively 33% worse with 1 more second on its cooldown, but also late game pig builds just feel much more viable with all the changes happening because everything else is slowing down. In particular, health stacking with double whammy, health stacking in general, like people just do so much less with the Omnibonk that it might just become nearly impossible to kill a health stacking pig. But one of the biggest secret buffs to both Pig and Dooley is that most people's starting kits are much worse at killing you on day 1. Nobody's getting a starting kit anymore that's like double barrel and a grenade. That's not happening. A lot of people are getting starting kits that are just money. A lot of people are getting 1 enchanted item that will frequently low roll. A lot of people are getting 1 skill that will frequently low roll. I think it's much easier to survive the early game on Pigs and Dooleys now, as opposed to just getting blown out by random kits from other players. So there's a lot changing with the general meta as a result of the Omnibonk. And then when you combine that with building into all the new multicast structures, I expect to see a fairly different game, although I am a little bit worried we'll be seeing some kind of severe pig dominance. Moving on to the encounter changes, Form, that's the weapon upgrade guy. His final option used to cost 30, it's down to 20, and now instead of guaranteeing shiny, it gives a random enchantment of obsidian or shiny. This isn't really a nerf or a buff, it just was too expensive and should have chosen from both. This is just important for like the cohesiveness of the game, it doesn't really matter for balance. B1 and B2 do matter for balance. They killed the upgrade all option because it was too good. I'm going to miss it, but it needed to go. They now spawn on day 1 to 5 only, and they're just a bronze upgrade. They're just Forge at bronze tier, and frankly, the game feels much healthier with them that way. You shouldn't be able to spend 8 gold to make 12 gold and also upgrade your whole board. This is better. Moving on to the Vanessa updates, Double Barrel only takes a 5 damage per tier hit, which admittedly Silver Double Barrel losing 10 damage a shot with base 4 hits, that's 40 damage in the early fights. That is enough to really meaningfully impact those fights, but the main nerf is supposed to come from the Omnibonk. I'm going to trust the devs on this. To me, it sounds like Double Barrel is still one of the best weapons in the game. Maybe it's supposed to be one of the best weapons in the game and they're worried about killing it, and the Omnibonk does affect it more than the vast majority of weapons, so I'll wait and see. This might be enough. I'm not confident, but it might be. Next up, the ice pick has gone down from 8 seconds to 6 seconds. Let me double check something. It's as I suspected, Volkus Enforcer uses the ice pick. That guy might just be killing us on day 10. I don't think ice pick's going to be playable or anything because like there's just not enough freeze in the game to really make ice pick very good. And if there is, you can probably just kill your opponent with like whatever else. Like you don't need the ice pick, right? So I still don't think ice pick is going to be good, but hey, buffing the shit out of a card when everyone else is getting their cooldown nerfed is a good way to make it go from terrible to viable, right? In the last patch, Shark Claws went off every 4 seconds, Ice Pick went off every 8. This patch, Shark Claws goes off every 5, and Ice Pick goes off every 6. That's a massive buff, right? So even though Ice Pick might not like be a reason to try to play Freeze Vanessa, you can't really force that anyway, it is so much better that maybe it's just good enough to hit boards now. I don't know. Next up, Shiny Port now gives it +1 multicast, not sure what it used to do, but more importantly, Ramrod is now down to reloading 1 ammo at all tiers, it no longer scales up, and that means your hasted double barrel will run out of bullets. That's a big nerf, that matters a lot. Next up, we've already covered all the multicast items in enough detail, so I won't cover that again. Shipwreck is back at gold. Silencer no longer becomes a weapon if it gets the Obsidian enchant, which is good. It's very funny that it did. I'm glad that randoming things like this no longer bricks them. It shouldn't work like that to begin with. I'm assuming the Crow's Nest didn't work this way, and that's why it's not being listed, and this one was just an oversight. Next up, we have the Pig updates. The Atlattl's base damage has dropped. Atlattl can still go down to 1 second by scaling its damage, making it just dramatically better, because if it's staying at 1 second and everything else is getting bonked, the Atlattl is just kind of insane, right? It does make Atlattl worse at lower tiers, but Atlattl has always been bad at lower tiers. It is now much stronger in the late game. This is a pretty massive buff to Pig's Gem, to Crook, and to any other build that was going to find a way to scale an Atlattl. Beast of Burden is being re-enabled. It starts at silver tier now, and needed to because it auto won bronze. at bronze in the early days. And its damage is now roughly the same, 50, 75, 100, as opposed to 60, 80, 100. And now it's the types of items you have, as opposed to when you buy an item, this gains that item's types. So you need to have these item types on your board. You won't have a 14x multicast Beast of Burden. You still might be seeing a pretty high multicast Beast of Burden. It might still be an absolute mid-game menace, especially in a post-bonk world where everything's slow enough to give you time for feasibly a second Beast of Burden hit. Like, being slow is just a better thing to be in this meta. Next up, Bushel got normalization. It's been slipping through the cracks. I would say that it's barely been nerfed at all at Diamond, to the point that this is basically just a buff. It's 10 lost at Diamond, 10 gained at Silver, 20 gained at Bronze. And since I tend to just use Bushel as my early game heal item anyway in a shield build, this in my eyes is almost just a Bushel buff. Pretty big nerf to Giant Ice Club coming out here. Now it scales up its damage as opposed to its charge time, making it a much slower item. There will still be gross Ice Club builds, but far less the moment a freeze goes off, the Giant Ice Club infinitely hits you until you die builds, which is probably good. They've reworked Deed, it's no longer infinite money. Now when you sell 10 items, adjacent items gain plus 5, 10, 15 value. That's just really good economy in general, right? Even if you're not playing Property Pig, you get a Deed, you put it between 2 junk items, and then it's going to generate 10 gold after about a day, right? It's better than Cash Register probably, if you can play around it. Then you combine it with the fact that this is really good scaling economy on property values. I think this is just a good item. I like the way it works. It's a good stash space item. I much prefer this to the previous iterations of Deed. Also, I'm going to call this Deed every time I see it. I'm not going to remember that it's named Ledger now. I've already covered the bunker redesign. I think this is a much stronger, more interesting item. It gives a much better route to late game power for shield dualies. I like this a lot. I'm looking forward to seeing it in play. The Isochoric Freezer's not really been nerfed very much. It starts at Silver instead of Bronze, and now it scales up 1, 2, 3 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's a big nerf. I think it matters a lot. It's basically not very good at Silver as opposed to not very good at Bronze, and that's much harder to fix. You can't just find one, throw it at B1, B2, and have a freeze for 2 now. The Gold and Diamond version are probably still very good, although at Gold with the Omni Bonk, this being 5 seconds now, I think this is a much healthier place for the card to be, but I don't think it's weak, although I'm not confident that it's strong either. The nanobots now have scaling enchants, as they well should have, and we've covered Robotics Factory in enough detail already when we covered similar cards earlier. Coming down to other item updates, Citrus gained the food type, which reminds me the Bushel update did not say that Bushel gained the food type. I guess you have to be Kripparrian for your specific complaints about things not having the food type to counts. Maybe next time. Next up, Claws and Fangs do not get Omniboxed. Claws are staying at 4. Damage is dropping a little bit at higher tiers. Well, rather substantially at highest tier. It's halved at Diamond. Coconuts also gain the food type. Eagle Talisman now gives a shiny if able, which is just, junk items should already be doing that. And Fang is going to 3-second cooldown with much lower damage. Assuming Katana got bonked, this is basically just Katana. If it didn't get bonked, then this is a little bit worse than Katana for 1 item slot. Either way, Fang has a place in builds. It's actually looking pretty hype. Truffles is also no longer a pig item. Now it's a loot type item. It no longer heals at all. It just is a passive thing. I think having more loot items that just generate value is a good change. It encourages complicated play where even if you don't have property, you hold on to truffles indefinitely because you could find more truffles to double stack them. So you're going to try to avoid selling this as long as possible. I like that change a lot, although I'm going to miss truffles on pig a lot more. Moving on to skill updates, Alacrity and Flurry of Blows both had a bug where they didn't affect items that were at the minimum cooldown of 1 second. A lot of people on Reddit got really aggressive about this and did a bunch of mental gymnastics and argued it was an intentional game design. It's not. I'm glad it's fixed. Previously, if you had a restorative at Ladle and you had these skills, they did nothing. But if you had a restorative at Ladle and you had the skill where when you use a weapon, charge a heal item 1 second, then it would just empty the Atlatl on GCD until that skill ran out of charges. I'm glad it works the way it should now. Red Envelope is disabled pending rework. Honestly, it doesn't feel like a skill. It probably should be. It's not that it's bad, it's just that it's not what skills do. And Honed Arsenal has been doubled in power. It needs it. It's a bad crit skill. There are a lot of others that need similar treatments. And lastly, I don't have any opinions on the monster updates. It's impossible to judge these from a patch note. Yurdan wasn't spawning, Dragon wasn't using its skill correctly, and there are several new enemies. But without seeing their whole board and really parsing how it's going to affect the ability to find things, I don't have any opinions on any of this. Other than Scoville on day 5 makes it slightly easier to find Black Pepper, which is good in a lot of builds. Also notable, it says it's a 6-second cooldown right here. Black Pepper used to be 7, so it looks like Black Pepper might have been directly buffed. It got Omni-bonked in the wrong direction. Anyways, that's gonna be all for now. I'm pretty sad about the state of pay to win happening in this patch. I'm hoping the devs decide to change how they're implementing it, because it is just objectively, undeniably pay to win. I personally don't mind the system that much. I was gonna buy it no matter what, but the fact that I'm going to have an unfair advantage doesn't feel good to me. I don't like it. And I know it's gonna do a lot more than devalue victories for other people. This will hurt the long-term growth of the game. And the cynic in me says this is just going to stay this way because it makes the most money. But the optimist in me says that this is actually a grift, and they're trying to really effectively monetize open beta and then generate goodwill by going back on it in the next patch. Regardless, whatever happens, happens. I'm not going to speculate too much about the monetization of the game going forward. The fact is, the monetization of the game currently is a bit shit, and I really hope it changes because this is not a good system. I understand the need to monetize the game, the need to make money, but just straight up saying that a free-to-play player literally cannot play with the new cards is a bad system. I've talked about it enough. I'm not going to go on any further. Anyways, I'll see all of you in the Bazaar. I've been Inko. If you made it this far, then please do hit all the buttons to the algorithm, leave a comment whining about pay to win. You know you want to. It does boost the channel up in the algorithm. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see all of you in the next one.